Good morning, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining. So happy to see you.
Happy to see you too, say it.
I've been really wanting to talk to you because you write such fantastic LinkedIn stories where you help entry-level Salesforce developer folks how to navigate the resume, networking, and a lot of other tips. I really recommend everyone to sign up to Andrew on LinkedIn. If you cannot connect to him, follow him. He might have reached his limit of how many people he connects. No?
No, no.
Okay, but he probably gets a lot of connection requests, but at least follow him, okay? He posts amazing content that gets like 3,000, 2,000 reactions. That's like probably the record of anyone I know in the Salesforce space. And so that's just, I love his content and I hope you guys like as well. So make sure to follow his stuff. Yeah. Good job, Andrew, for doing this amazing stuff.
Thank you.
Uh, so in this interview, I'm hoping that listeners will learn about some of the best tips for Salesforce entry-level professionals. And also, I'm hoping that people get some good Salesforce career tips, just even more experienced people. Because Andrew has just about 4 years of experience, I think, in the Salesforce space, right?
5. I started
Fi
back in 2015.
oh, okay, 5 years. And so, and he's worked at some of the biggest brands, biggest companies in the space. Yeah. So I'm sure he's doing something right to get all these things lined up correctly. So this has been a very interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to this so much. I've been waiting for this moment. Andrew, thanks again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. How did you get started with Salesforce? I know you studied computer science at Carleton University in Canada, and you probably had a choice of different things you can pursue. Mm, Front end, I don't know, most mainstream more mainstream software engineering jobs, but you picked Salesforce, which is not very mainstream, right? Why Salesforce?
So I think I was always interested in the intersect between business and technology. I like technology, I love to code, but I didn't really see myself as the type of person to just be coding at a computer all day. I wanted to interact with other people. I wanted to interact with cross-functional teams. And so naturally enterprise software came up as, the most appropriate option. I was also very interested in consulting. And of course, CRM and enterprise software consulting is a very big part of technology consulting. So it came as a natural fit. And I think once I discovered Salesforce and I began to play around with it, I really saw the potential, not just being able to sort of be in the developer role that I wanted to be in, but also having the opportunity to, help accelerate business processes and automate a lot of workflows. I think that really excited me, just being able to have exposure to both the tech and business side of things.
But when you were starting to learn Salesforce, you probably didn't know all this stuff, right? Did you just
Yeah, so when I started Salesforce, I kind of dived right into development, which I know a lot of people don't do. A lot of people will do admin first, and they'll do the point and click, but I actually dived into development because I was studying computer science, and so I really wanted to get experience developing. And I remember I would watch David Liu's videos online, and I think my first code was just a quick trigger that he taught you how to make. And the moment where I was like, wow, I can automate the business process just like that. Imagine how I could scale this for a company. Imagine the creativity I could bring by implementing more automation and scaling to a higher level. So I think at that point, I realized the extent of the capabilities of the Salesforce platform, that really enables you to do pretty much anything you want in custom code. And I think that's really where I decided I wanted to be a Salesforce developer. Like I told people about Salesforce, hey, this is a really cool thing. It's called Salesforce. It's like business technology, but people weren't really interested. People were very interested in like web development, full stack development, that sort of thing. Yeah, sure. So what initially happened was a recruiter reached out to me over LinkedIn, and we connected. He let me know that they were hiring for the new year. So this was back in October 2019. So he reached out, we made some contact, we had some conversations back and forth. And then I kind of didn't hear back for a month later when he checked in. But then by that point, I had other interviews happening. So then they were able to fortunately expedite my process. So then I got booked for the second round interview after, of course, having a phone call with the recruiter, which that I think would count as the first round. So the second round, I had a coding interview with a Google Salesforce developer. So we opened up a Google Doc, and they gave me some use cases, and I had to code in Apex on the Google Doc, which is interesting, because it's kind of like coding on Microsoft Word. It's not really what you're used to. Nonetheless, I found it was a very fair coding assessment, and mostly they were looking to make sure that my solutions were complete, that I was addressing corner cases, that I was following best practices. I wouldn't say it was particularly difficult. It was just that they wanted to make sure I was very thorough. I think that was the emphasis. So then once that went through, I got invited to come to California for the third round, where I flew to Silicon Valley, and I had a day of six interviews lined up. So the first interview was just behavioral, so a Googliness interview where they get to know me. They talk about my past experiences, how I handle certain situations. Overall, it's a pretty good interview. Second interview was coding, which is very similar to the second round interview, where I had to code in Apex certain scenarios, certain solutions. And again, I think they were looking more for completeness. And something I did notice was, compared to the second round interview, the interviewer for the third round coding interview was much less, like if I would ask a question, he would just kind of shrug his shoulders. So I guess it can vary by interviewer too. Then the third round was an algorithms round. So I had like two lead code style questions asked. And I think that I kind of expected that because the recruiter let me know. So I did practice beforehand, but I think that was an interesting one. And so something a lot of Salesforce developers interviewing at Google ask me about, because I think, algorithms aren't something you really do in the enterprise software space. Nonetheless, I think it was fair, and I think I did decently well on that. Fourth one was application design. So, come up with an application for your business users to accomplish a certain goal, draw it out, explain the features you would use on Salesforce, what's custom, what's out of the box. And the fifth interview was systems integration. So you have Salesforce and you have all these other systems. What are the available options to integrate them? How can you, which ones do you choose and why? And you work with the interviewer to plan, design, and integration. And then the sixth one is just the launch interview, where you go and you have lunch with a Google employee, which is fun, and it's a good way to relax and hear more about the culture, ask questions in a more relaxed setting. So that was my third round. And then once I passed that, they put together a package with my interview feedback and sent that to the hiring committee for approval. Once that got approved, it went to VP approval. And then once that got approved, I did team matching, where they send out my package to all these managers across different teams at Google. And if anyone's interested, I get an interview with them. So I interviewed for the hardware team, and I got the job. And then the offer came through. It's definitely a little more of an extended process after the third round, because I know a lot of companies will give you the offer right after the third round. But ultimately, it took from, I'd say, the recruiter reached out in October, and I got the offer in early January. So that's a few months. Yeah, so I think that because I do have experience with Salesforce, it's almost like every day is practice on my day-to-day job, right? So I wasn't too worried about having me to practice sort of solutions, but I did kind of make a cheat sheet and kind of read over it so many times a day to kind of just memorize a lot of formatting and certain ways interfaces to implement and things like that. But I think the Google Docs interview wasn't so bad. What was bad was when I went for the on-site and the laptop wasn't working, so I had to code on the whiteboard. That was bad because they were expecting me to be efficient, and recycle code, and it was difficult to kind of go back and insert code in between or remove code and make a new function when it's on the whiteboard. On Google Docs, at least I could copy paste it. It would have been a lot easier. Yeah, but the Google laptop wasn't working. I think what happened was the person before hadn't signed out or something. I forget what happened. But they told me I will only usually you have a choice between whiteboard or computer. but the computer was unavailable. So then I had to do it on the whiteboard. But the interviewer did say, he would add a note that the computer wasn't available, and so I had to do whiteboard. I mean, this wasn't in Apex. It wasn't like they brought out developer console and they wanted to make sure it executed. I would say it was very much like lead code questions. Where you deal with linked lists, trees, sorting arrays, that type of thing. I don't think I can actually say what the question was, but I don't think it was related to Salesforce. I think it was just a general algorithm question. And I kind of just wrote it in Apex, which is pretty much Java, right? So kind of just Java formatting. So I think I just kind of went over the basics of algorithms, trees and different ways to sort and linked lists, and kind of just refresh through kind of what I learned in university. I didn't dive too deep into it because I didn't expect that they would really ask me something super complex. I think they kind of know that, it's just more of a app engineer role, but I definitely, refresh on terminology, the different concepts, different approaches. I think that did help. I do know that if I hadn't prepared that, I would have done very poorly on that interview. But fortunately, I did get a chance to review the concepts, do some lead code questions, and I felt I was decently prepared. Engineer, right? So I'm in charge of actually developing and implementing the solutions that we build for our business teams. So I'm in Google hardware, and I work mostly with the supply chain teams as well as the other teams that work with our partners and essentially sales and marketing. And so I develop custom business applications for them on the Salesforce platform. I work typically with a business analyst who handles more of the consultant type role. So he's the one who negotiates the functionality with the stakeholders, takes care of that type of stuff. But sometimes I will step up and just set up meetings with the stakeholders because I do have the consultant background. And I'll do, I'll look at requirements. I'll say what's feasible or not. I'll give estimates and negotiate those requirements as well. So I do play a pretty hybrid role, but I am trying to get more. I do try to do more hands-on development and engineering than BA work when I can. Work-life balance is definitely really great. My boss told me he doesn't want me working more than 40 hours a week. He wants me to take care of my mental health and make sure I'm staying healthy. So I think Google is really supportive of work-life balance in general, not just in Salesforce roles, but across the board. And that's something I really like about the company. I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 weeks where I was kind of really stressed and working late hours. But I think that was just more due to my misorganization. And, I could definitely plan that out a lot better. But general, I think the expectations are very fair. And I think that we even have flexible hours, so like if I stay up late one night because I can't sleep and then decide to do a little work, I can sleep in the next morning. It's usually not a problem if I don't have meetings. So everyone's very understanding. As long as the work gets done, I think no one really cares if, you're at your desk 9 to 5.
Cool. And is Google meeting your expectations of this amazing company? How is reality versus expectations?
Sure. I think I haven't really had a fair chance to evaluate Google because I've been working from home the entire time. But so far, I think I really like how supportive and transparent my organization is. For example, when we have our town halls or meetings with leadership, people can just ask any question. Leadership will usually actually give you a direct answer. While in consulting, I've found that if you ask kind of direct questions, so that you're given like a very fluffy answer that doesn't really answer the question. But at Google, I found they're pretty transparent, and unfortunately, that does result in us having some problems with leaks and things like that. But I do appreciate that leadership is often transparent with us. My manager is just great. I know he has my back no matter what, which I really like. I think in general, most Google managers I've met are really supportive of you and really want to support you in your career goals. Google as a company gives you the opportunity to do 20% projects. So for example, if I wanted to do product management tomorrow, I would probably find like a 20% project I could do with 20% of my time as a product manager within Google, which I think is a pretty cool experience, right? Because you get to work with really talented people. So I think Google is a really great company. I'm hoping to get back to campus soon so I can experience all the benefits like, free gyms, free food, free snacks, things like that, because I haven't been a fan of working from home. But so far, I'd say that I'm pretty impressed with Google and, how efficient the processes are and with the caliber of my teammates.
Cool. I heard this 20% thing got canceled, so it is still there. It's not canceled. Yeah, you can still use 20% for whatever projects you want?
Yeah, I just looked at it last week. I think it's still there.
Okay, okay, that was no, I just heard it a couple of years ago. Then it must have been false information. So what have you been using? Have you used your 24% to do something, or are you still quite busy getting used to and doing your work?
Yeah, no, I think right now and probably until I reach 1 year Google, I'm very focused on just, establishing myself within my team, managing my workload and kind of figuring out how things work. Like I said earlier, I did get to a point where, I was super busy for 1 or 2 weeks. I think I had to work one weekend, but it wasn't because the job was demanding. It was more because I didn't plan accordingly because I didn't realize how Google really worked. So now, I'm focusing on, building reports with my team, which is especially hard when you're working from home because, it's difficult to see how your relationship with the colleagues is developing if, you can't really see each other face to face. It's just a few voice calls a week. So I think I'm focused on that right now. I don't think I'm going to be doing any 20% work in the near future.
Cool, cool. You're working at Google right now as a Salesforce developer. How many Salesforce developers are there at Google, do you estimate?
Uh, I have no idea, to be honest. A lot, probably a lot. But there's also full-time employees and there's a lot of contractors. We work with contractors as well, right? They're pretty much doing the same work we do, but they're, not Google employees. Either they're contractors or, they're other vendors like consulting firms, etc. So I think the number varies on what filters you want to apply. But like my team is pretty small. It's just me and two other engineers, and we handle, yeah, the Salesforce development for.
All right. Uh, you've reached Google. It's a strong brand name you can have. Uh, it's something that many people dream to work at, especially for Salesforce developers, I think. Where do you see yourself going from here? Uh, is there another challenge, another goal that you want to achieve for yourself?
Sure. You know, I think that my career has progressed in an interesting way, and I think that my priorities have changed over time. And I honestly never thought I would end up at Google. So it's still something I'm still taking in and still experiencing. But you know what? I think I'm pretty happy here. Like I said, I like how encouraging my manager is. Um, I'm new to kind of industry because I had the background in consulting before. But I think that I'm sure my priorities will continue to change in the future, right? Whether I get a family and want to live somewhere else, or we'll see what happens. But I think for right now, I'm pretty happy at Google. I think that it's been a very pleasant experience. I think I really like the caliber of my teammates. I think I'm able to learn a lot from them, and my work is held to very high expectations, which I think will really help my career and my professional development. So I think for the near future, I think I'm definitely interested in Google, and staying here for the long term. But it will definitely, depend on how my personal and professional priorities develop over the next few years.
Okay. All right. So you've done pretty good working at Deloitte, McKinsey, Google, and even at the leading Salesforce implementation company in Czech Republic. Uh, amazing. Good job, Andrew. You're doing something correct. Can you share some tips that have helped you do well? Is it like hardworking? Do you really like prepare well for the interviews, or is it that you're like LinkedIn posts give you some certain credibility and interviewers are more sympathetic to you? What are some things that you think you've done well and some things that other people can learn from you?
Yeah, so I want to go back to one point you brought up there, working in the Czech Republic. Actually, that's a really interesting point because when I decided that, I wanted to go work abroad, I didn't really care about working for a brand name company. I didn't really care about making a lot of money. I just wanted to have the international experience. All of my peers at the time told me that I was essentially burying my career. This I should be focused on working at a brand name company. Getting a good title, especially coming off an IBM contract earlier. I had some momentum. Everyone said that my career was going to be over now. It was going to get buried. It was going to, I was taking a step back. And you know what? Like a few years later, they're all in the same place. My career did not get buried. So that's one point where, like if you want something, go for it. Like ultimately, what makes you happier than anyone else. You know what you want more than anyone else. Go for it. If you want to work for a startup, go for it. If you want to work at a big company like Google, go for it. Don't let anyone stop you. And I think that, when I went to Czech Republic, I think that was a very important experience for me because they held, so AspectWorks, the company I worked for there, held very high coding standards that I hadn't witnessed before. And I did not witness until I came to Google now. And I think that really showed me the importance of what, really committing to good code and delivering client excellence meant. And I think that kind of pushed me to have high standards. And I think that was a big part of my career, never settling for, well, it works, so let's just deliver that, right? No, we need to make sure our code looks great. We need to make sure it's very efficient. We need to make sure we're refactoring code. We need to make sure everything's done right. So I think that was a very important part of my career. Then as far as any advice I had for people, I think
One
that,
second, sorry. You said that working for this Czech company accelerated your like apex skills because they had much higher standards than like at your previous companies.
yeah, I think so. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that because I think that in the other companies, the focus was more on delivering functionality, while at AspectWorks, they actually wanted to make sure the code was good. Like there would actually be code reviews, and you would openly give feedback on code. While other companies was more like, well, if it works, it works. And in addition, actually, another reason why I really liked working there was because I got to work with Lightning components there when kind of they had just come out, which is something new.
With what? Sorry, I didn't miss it.
Lightning components.
Oh, Lightning components. Okay.
Yeah, that was back in like 2016, which is really great because at IBM I had done Visual Force, and as other opportunities that were available, they were kind of working on bigger projects which were still on Visual Force. So I got to really upskill myself, and I got to learn a new skill that was becoming fairly in demand. And I think that really prepared me, even for my current role, because I don't think I had continuous Lightning development experience anytime other than in Prague. And now with my current job, I'm developing, Lightning components, and I'm supposed to know that already. So I think that was definitely a good choice, and it definitely helped me prepare, even for this Google job today.
Wow. So if you didn't go to Czech Republic, maybe you wouldn't have done as well on this Google interviews.
Well, they didn't test me on Lightning components, but I think I would
But like
definitely,
Apex, right?
Yeah, but I think I would have definitely been struggling a little bit in my job right now if I hadn't had that experience in Prague.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go back to the question of, so the first thing is just do what you like, that you enjoy. Somehow it will help you, like, right? That's what
Yeah,
you did with the AspectWorks. You went against the trend, against the advice of many classmates, friends, and just went to this foreign country, gain experience, and turned out really well for you in the long run.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know what? I think to develop a career, you need to be in a positive headspace. I think you need to be enthusiastic. You need to be able to have the energy to go out there, network, talk to people, learn. I think it can be difficult to have that headspace if you're not in an environment which you enjoy. So, if you're working a job because you kind of just want the brand name or you want the paycheck or whatever, I think that it's going to be difficult to grow out of that. And even if you do get the paycheck or you get the brand name recognition, I think that it's going to show in interviews. When you lack enthusiasm, when you lack the problem solving skills. And like I said, a lot of brand name companies don't necessarily have the best practices. So you know what, you might work at a brand name company, but then if you're not getting exposure to the latest technologies, or you're not learning or getting to apply the best practices, that's not really helping your career, right? And it's going to show when you do interviews, for example, like at Google, and where you're asked to code an Apex solution, but then your answers aren't complete, like your solutions aren't thorough, your solutions don't address corner scenarios because in your last job you didn't have to address corner scenarios. You're going to just deliver something that works. So I think people should definitely focus. I think developers should definitely focus on opportunities that make them happy, that feel where they feel they're getting the professional development. I think it will pay dividends in the long run.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So three things you think you did well that help you do well in your career and other people can learn from you. What would they
Sure.
be?
Number one, soft skills. I think that's important when it comes to networking, interviewing, but also working, especially as a Salesforce engineer, where oftentimes you'll have to communicate with stakeholders and clients. You have to negotiate functionality, have to negotiate requirements. I think soft skills are very important. The most common reason I've heard people getting rejected from Google has been because of a lack of soft skills and being unable to take suggestions or unable to take feedback or didn't seem like a team player. Number two, I'd say holding yourself to the highest standards. I think, Salesforce is pretty clear on best practices as far as coding goes. And I think that it can be easy to get carried away when no one's really holding you to those high standards. Or, like if you're the lead developer and there's no one peer reviewing your code, it can be easy to just, find the easiest and fastest way to deliver something. But I think holding yourself to the high standards will definitely, again, pay dividends in the long run. I think it's going to show when, you do get a chance to interview or when you talk tech with other people or, when you post code on GitHub, I think it's definitely going to show. And then number three, I would say just, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Even at Google right now, like when I entered, I was pretty surprised with how talented my two engineer colleagues are. And I think that I'm definitely outside my comfort zone because I feel like the expectations are a lot higher. But I think, that's pushed me to grow even more and develop even more. And, it's pushing myself to be better. So I think stepping out of your comfort zone is also very important. And, again, that's something I did like going to Europe for some time, where I got to learn some very valuable skills like developing Lightning components and things like that.
Okay. So number one was improve your soft skills. And what can people do to improve their soft skills? Is it writing LinkedIn posts, making YouTube videos? What do you think is the best way, or what worked the best for you in that sense?
No, I think soft skills, you can practice by talking to people. I say just talk to people, set up networking calls, practice talking to people. Something I do is, I'll watch like someone I admire, like a politician or a speaker or something, and then try to sort of emulate the way they speak and emulate how they talk to other people, and then try to emulate that same style in your own conversations with people. And I think eventually it'll become more natural or it'll merge with your natural way of conversation. I think that helps a lot. But ultimately, I think it's just practice. I think practice makes perfect. And going to networking events. I guess now there are more virtual networking events. There are many events on Meetup.com, Toastmasters. I think that there are so many opportunities out there for you to talk to people. And a lot of times, soft skills really just, are you able to talk about yourself? When a recruiter asks, tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume. Are you able to tell a story? Are you able to be persuasive? Are you able to sound interested in what you're doing? So I think that that's very important.
Okay. And next point was hold yourself to higher standards. It's very difficult to hold yourself to higher standards because like you don't know what the higher standards are. Like how can you know what the higher standards should be? And how did you do that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think as far as it goes to for Salesforce best practices, those are pretty clear. I think you might already know, but like a lot of people in the Salesforce developer world don't really apply all the even just the basic best practices, right? And I've seen that before, where you have like so-called queries in for loops, where you have really messy code, or you have test classes without assertion statements. So just basic things like that. I think I
I
think
see.
as long as you're doing what sales recommends as best practices, I think you're already on the right path.
I see. I see. Got it. Got it. Doing a null check. And
Yeah, exactly. That type of stuff.
got it. Got it. All right. And stepping out of comfort zone. And what did you mean by that? Stepping out of comfort zone?
Sure. So, for example, let's say I was just starting on my career, right? And then I see an opportunity. So, yeah, kind of like when I was after IBM, I had some, I had a good name on my resume. I had momentum. There were a lot of opportunities coming my way with big companies, but I knew that those big consultancies would be working on supporting previous large implementations, which were using, the older framework called Visualforce, right? But then there was this new framework coming that just came out called Lightning, which I thought was more valuable for my career. But I knew that I wouldn't be able to get to work on Lightning with any of the big companies because they were all supporting these bigger implementations that had taken place 1, 2, 3 years ago. And ultimately, the opportunity that did come up was, to go to Prague, work with a smaller company there, be able to learn Lightning components from scratch, be able to get hands-on development there. And obviously moving to a different continent where you don't speak the language um, is stepping out of comfort zone. But I kind of recognized that it was kind of what was better for my career, and it was a skill that would be valuable. And so I did it, and it definitely paid off. It was a great experience to to live in Prague for a little bit. And like I said, I think those the skills I picked up there are directly applicable to the work I do day to day now at Google.
Cool, cool. All right, so this was about you. Next, I would like to talk about your work helping others. Uh, you've been doing amazing work uh, helping others, preparing interview guides, writing extensive LinkedIn posts, your resume review sessions, and just probably a bunch of other things that I didn't notice. Uh, and I've been following you for the 6 months on LinkedIn. It's amazing work you're doing, really amazing.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned, I recommend everyone to follow Andrew. Yeah, if you're not following Andrew and you're trying to get your first Salesforce job, you're missing out on a lot of good stuff. They're very easy to understand, very actionable stuff. And your posts are getting very good reactions. And I saw one of your posts got like 3,200 reactions. That must be how many? Like, I don't know, 500,000 people viewed it? What was the record for the number of
Um,
views?
I've gotten a few million.
Million? Few
Yeah.
million? What?
Yeah, it's actually really weird because a lot of posts that, so I don't think engagement is correlates with sorry, I don't think engagement correlates with views. Sometimes I've gotten posts that have like very little engagement but they get the most views, and posts that have a lot of engagement but then get like the least views. I think I'm not sure how the LinkedIn algorithm works, but they don't always correlate.
A couple of views? How many couple of millions? Like 1 million, 2 million?
Probably, yeah, within the 1 to 5 range.
1 to 5 million views? Oh my God. That's like probably every single Salesforce developer on Google, I mean on LinkedIn must have seen your posts. Then like 5 million. Oh my God. That's incredible. I thought 1 million tops. Up to 5 million. That's amazing. Well done, Andrew.
Thank you. But I think it's a big part of the LinkedIn platform, right? Where it kind of shows you posts by other people. Like if your network likes a post, even if you don't follow the poster, you still see it on your feed, right? So I think the LinkedIn platform generally really does a good job in exposing your content to people outside of your direct network.
Yeah, sometimes I post content that I think is good, but doesn't get big good traction. And uh, I think what has helped me, for example, sometimes is I like tag people, use hashtags. What are things that have helped you get good traction? Is it like super content and then you just win
Um,
win by content?
so I mean, I think it depends what you're looking for. I know a lot of LinkedIn content creators have their own things to use, hashtags, things like that. The only thing I really do is just I know that if you post a link in the post, then LinkedIn downgrades it. So like whenever I post a link, I'll post it as a comment, not on the post.
Hmm.
But that's the only thing I do. I know people use hashtags and tag people. I don't really do that because like, I'm not really concerned about engagement or anything like that. Yeah, I think it really depends. Like if you want to get your link out there, or do you want to get engagement? Do you want to get more followers? People will write like follow me for more content, stuff like that. I think when I was doing it maybe a year ago, I was doing it more for exposure. And I did get the exposure. That's kind of how I got my Google job and all these other interviews. But I think at this point, honestly, I'm just looking to, share my ideas with people, because, getting a lot of exposure can also be very overwhelming. And that's kind of why I stopped posting between like
Mm,
April and recently, because like I was just, and I think that's kind of when we met up too, because I was getting a ton of DMs, like literally hundreds a day, and it's super overwhelming. And you just aren't able to keep up with that. And you know, I don't really like to pick and choose who I talk to. So like I'll just not reply to anyone. So yeah, I think there's a fine balance. But I think ultimately a lot of it is just luck, to be honest. If someone with a lot of followers likes your content, it's going to get exposed to a lot of people. But if no one with a lot of followers like it, it's not going to get that much exposure. So I think a lot of it is just luck too.
no, I don't think it's like. I think it's just really good content, Andrew. You have really good content. There is no fluff. There is no like sneaky advertising or something. It's just really good
Oh yeah,
content, Andrew. Well done.
yeah, and you know what? Thank you. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I'm not as active on LinkedIn anymore. I'm just really tired of all the, upselling and all kind of like the content that's very fluffy that doesn't really provide much hard value. It's just kind of, um, I don't know. I'm just not really happy with most of the content I see on LinkedIn these
Yeah,
days.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's like becoming like Facebook sometimes. Uh,
It's worse than Facebook, man.
really? Oh. All right. So you've been producing this amazing content, really. Like you're not even a recruiter or HR person, but the advice you give out is fantastic. Yeah. I I'm really interested in this topic about how to get a first Salesforce developer job, because I realize it's much more difficult than many people want to admit. Many people say become a Salesforce developer. It's a great career, such a huge market, Salesforce growing so fast, and then do Trailhead, do all this stuff. But then it's really difficult to get first because no one wants to hire someone with no experience. And you come up with really good stuff. And I'm sure it takes up a lot of your time to write these posts, right? They probably take up maybe I don't know half a day, maybe a couple of days just to come up with a good idea to share.
No, man. I mean, like
No.
honestly, and that's kind of what I think that's what I tried to do like 2 years ago when I first began posting on LinkedIn, and like just like I got no engagement, it sucked. And then kind of like when I kind of just began posting things off the top of my head, that's kind of where things picked up. I think people just
Really?
like the authenticity of that. Yeah,
Really?
like if you look at like especially like my past posts like this month, like I posted them at like midnight because I can't sleep. I'm eating like ramen noodles while watching Netflix, and then like an idea will come to my mind. I'm like I'll write it and I'll post it. Um, yeah, so I mean, I think I like that more too because I think like if you spend so much time writing on something, you're going to like be so glued to your screen to make sure you get your return on investment, right? You're gonna think I spent so much time like on this,
Yeah.
people need to like it, but like if you post something, I mean, I don't care if you get like 10 likes, it's just kind of like a random thought at midnight because I see a DM or a post that really kind of ticks me off, and so it's a way of me replying to that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's another tip then. If someone wants to write good LinkedIn post, then just maybe make it uh, ad hoc. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like what you think is a good idea isn't necessarily a good idea.
yeah.
Um, so just write different things that come to mind, and eventually something will click, and you'll realize, oh wow, people really resonate with this. Let me try
Cool.
this again. And I think that's a good way of discovering what you might want to post about that garners the engagement you want.
Cool. What has been your favorite LinkedIn post that you've written? Do you have your own personal favorite?
Yes, I do. I think it was so just off the top of my head, I was in the Philippines a few months ago, and I was on this beach and at this beach bar having a beer. And then, these two guys come up and ask the bartender if he has an outlet because he wants to charge his daughter's phone or something. And, the bartender says, no, we're solar powered. We need the energy. But I have a battery pack. So, I say, hey, well, I have a battery pack. If you want, you can take it and charge your family's phone. And they say, oh, thank you. And they go to give it to their daughter, and they come back and they buy me a beer. And, we talk, and it turns out they're actually from Mountain View, so here in California, where I was moving to like a month later for this Google job. And the guy's father who was also there, was actually like a VP at like a really big tech company here in the Bay Area. So we talk, and it was just a really interesting example of how you never know who you're going to meet. And I feel like a lot of people just aren't very open to meeting new people randomly. Well, I'm just like, I'll talk to anyone, especially when I travel. Um, I'm a solo traveler, so that's kind of how you meet people. And yeah, I connect with them. I just had a call with them like a few weeks ago. We couldn't meet up because of the pandemic, but it was cool to have not just a connection here in the Bay Area, someone that could go hang out with, but also a professional connection, someone that knows the industry, and in a way people I can receive maybe some advice on, as far as navigating the tech life here in the Bay Area or navigating the tech scene, building a network, etc. So I think that was a really interesting experience. And yeah, I just wrote that post like right there after it happened while I was at the bar. Um, and yeah, it did fairly well.
Wow, cool. And you, your posts are practical posts, yeah? You don't write just like some like fun posts. You write things that people can read and use. What has there been a success story? Some interesting story? Someone read your post, did something, and then I'm sure there have been a bunch of success stories, interesting stories. Is there one that has been your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of feedback on my posts. Like a lot of people will say that they like my content and it encourages them to do things. Like there's a guy who so I wrote a post about how I got the Google job, and a guy started a podcast because of that post, and now the podcast is doing very well. But I get a lot of messages, people that seem to take my post well, they like my content, which I think is great. But what I personally like to do more is just do the one-on-ones I've done. I think I get more. I think I'm able to deliver more value out of that, even if it's just like for a 5 or 10 minute call. I think I'm able to kind of provide more personalized advice to people, which they really need. Um, so, for example, there's one Salesforce professional who reached out to me who had been doing Salesforce for about a year, and he wasn't really getting much traction. He had volunteered a bunch. He freelanced. He had certifications, but he didn't really have much traction going. And so I looked at his resume, and his resume was just kind of like a big mess. And he had all these experiences all over the place. So I told him to narrow it down, focus on your achievements. I made him put all his freelancing and pro bono work into one section called self-employment, and list them as clients. And after we fixed up his resume, he told me that EY, Salesforce, all these big companies were reaching out to him now because of that. Well, before, he was getting no leads. So I think I was very happy with that, happy with how, 5 to 10 minutes could really change someone's life and get them to a better career, which, directly translates to, a better standard of living. So I think that's what I find really rewarding.
Wow. Why are you so passionate about helping people?
Um, to be honest, part of it is just because I'm bored. I moved to the Bay Area 5 months ago. I know nobody here. I stay at home all day, watch Netflix. I have no life, man. So but I'm also not a career coach, right? I don't go into these meetings or these calls with an agenda or something, or I'm not trying to upsell anything. Most of the time, people need feedback. It's very obvious things. So I think as far as just repeating those obvious things go, I don't really mind, especially if it makes a difference for them. I don't mind having those conversations. But at the same time, because a lot of the feedback I give is very repetitive, I made that resume guide a while back. I think a lot of people found very helpful. And often when people ask me for resume feedback, I just point them to that because I know that's already going to contain any feedback I will probably provide. So yeah, I mean, in a way, I like to help people at the same time. I'm not like a career coach or anything, so I think it's really just me having a person-to-person conversation and seeing how I can help. I don't think it's so much me going out, coaching people or guiding people or anything like that.
Cool, cool, cool. I was just thinking maybe, um, for example, one of the reasons I like to help people is because I just uh, myself, a bunch of people have helped me, and also I really just enjoy helping people. I don't know, uh, because I went through this journey. I know how difficult it is, and coming from non-IT background into IT background and the struggles of it. So I can empathize with a lot of people with the struggles that they face. And all right, I'll cut out my answer. Your answers were very, very good, but my answer is not.
No worries.
All right. You mentioned the kickass resume guide, which is really kickass. Everyone should read it. I love the resume samples you have for college students, for professionals, and the design of the whole document. Fantastic. Yeah. Anyone who wants to prepare a good Salesforce resume should print it out, analyze it, use it. Really good job, Andrew. It's a huge contribution to the Salesforce developer community. What is the next guide you're working on or that you would like to work on?
Thank you. And just to touch on that resume guide, I think that's something I'm really happy I built because I got to collaborate with Anastasia Essen, who's a recruiter at Tesla. And I think an issue with getting resume feedback from people is often people will have different opinions on how a resume should look. So I think because I had the chance to collaborate with Anastasia, we were able to kind of negotiate and kind of come down to more, we're able to come to a consensus on what the resume should look like. So on top of that, we also had a bunch of her recruiter contacts at big tech companies look through our guide too and provide feedback before we published it. So that's definitely a very good like standard resume guide that I think focuses on what that resume should look like and kind of like what the general consensus is, because I think there's a lot of information put out there about resumes. Should you include references or not? What type of information you should include, how you should portray it. So I think the resume guide really standardizes it across different companies, across different perspectives, just because we had so many good perspectives contribute to it. So I'm really proud of that. What comes next, dude? I don't know. That guy was a lot of work. I would love to put something together relating to how to send a cold message, how to approach you. But I think the problem with that is that it has to be very personalized, in my opinion. I think it's difficult to standardize personalized messages. It's difficult to fake interest in someone. And I think if you do, like if I gave you a template on how to fake interest to someone, great, you'll get a reply. But then when you set up a phone call, it'll be evident that that person is not interested in talking to the other person at all. So I'm still trying to think about a way to do that. I do want to collaborate with Anastasia again on something because I really did like working with her and I liked her perspective. So I'm sure I'll come up with something in the future.
Cool. Yeah, the cold messaging one will be really cool because I don't even not sure how to cold message people. I just not sure what the standards are or the best practices are. I just do it, and I would love to hear your thoughts on how to do it. So I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to that guide.
yeah. I mean, I'm still trying to narrow it down. I don't even send that cold messages very much anymore. But for example, back in Chicago, so like about a year ago, I decided, what, like I'm pretty happy with my job at Deloitte, but I'm going to just network just because I miss networking. And I think I sent out like 4 messages, only 4 cold messages, like 4 people who I found, and like 3 out of 4 of them replied, and we set up calls or whatever. So like I think that's a great success ratio, like 75%. Like
That's
most
amazing.
people I talk to get like under 10%. Yeah, but again, it's because I focus on quality over quantity, and I think people just focus on quantity most of the time, but and then they get no results, which doesn't really make sense anyway, right? So I think it's definitely important to look at people who you have something in common with, being able to connect on that mutual interest, and being able to take that to leverage that to set up a call or something and take it to the next level.
Cool, cool, cool. All right, we're talking about resume. I would like to show you a sample resume of someone that I think has a pretty good resume, in my opinion, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Okay, I will
Sure,
share my.
sure.
I will pull it up right now. All right. Can you see my screen, Andrew?
Yes.
Let me make it bigger. All right, I can even give you
Okay.
control so you can navigate.
Oh, that would be great.
How do I give control? Remote control. Andrew. There you go.
Cool. Okay. So I think formatting wise, looks nice. I like it. Um, so right off the bat, that's good. Strategic computer skills. Okay, good. Okay. Um, the don't include address in this just because like you never know where your resume is going to end up. And so I think you don't want people to know where you live. This is something.
Okay.
Um, despite also on this no visa sponsorship required. That's um, good, I think, but I think they should specify like if they don't require, are they a citizen? Are they on the green card or are they on some type of visa? I think because this is great, but it doesn't really specify what is happening there. So, for example, for me, I'm on the TN visa, right? So I'll just include like TN visa, so recruiters know what that is.
So 1 second. So should it
Sure.
stay like this, or should it say like on work authorization?
Yeah. So specify what specify what type of work authorization. I think
On
if you
work
want to include it.
authorization, and then here in in brackets it could be like what kind of visa it is. Yeah, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so like typically, um, yeah. I mean, I would just like I wouldn't even write on work authorization. I just include like GC holder or citizen. Just
Oh, I see,
right
I
to
see,
it.
I see, I see.
Or H1B. Yeah.
Holder,
Yeah. There you go.
or she's like she has some kind of a special work visa, and she could just include the name of the work visa then.
Yeah, exactly. Just so then it specifies. Typically on the form, it'll say, do you have the right when you apply? It'll say, do you have the right to work here, etc. But I think it doesn't hurt to include it because I think when you have a foreign last name, like I do, sometimes people might assume things, right?
Got it. Okay.
Okay, okay. Then if we look at, so then I'll save experience for last. But then I think if we look at like affiliation, that's good. Education looks good too. Um, so as far as experience goes, I'll focus on the Salesforce part because I'm not really familiar with law. Um, I think what we're seeing here is this person is kind of writing. This reads more like a job description rather than what she's achieved. Um, I think that they need to focus more on what they achieved using those uh, features. So, for example, I'm able to type. Let's see. Okay. So, for example, if I had to rewrite the first one, I would do something like supported continuous product development of GetForce. What type of product providing managed
Some
services?
kind of app.
Okay. So they make supported continuous product development of yeah, we'll just say Lightning. And then like just industry. What was the purpose of that? Um, using Apex classes and Asian through triggers, resulting. And then this is the last word. You want to show impact in a way, so resulting in um, higher efficiencies by 100%. Just so for example, if let's say you implemented a call center application that makes the start to finish of logging a call faster, you want to see how much faster is it? Is it 50% faster? If it's something like 30 seconds faster, well, how long did it take before? If it was 1 minute before, well, that's 50% faster. Right? So you want to have quantitative metrics there. I think it's really important to show the impact. But ultimately, you want to share what you did specifically. And you want to have the details on that. You don't want to say just I did Apex classes and triggers. You want to say what did you use them for? To specify the use case, share details on the product, and I think that also invites the interviewer to take an interest in the product, and then they can ask questions about what you worked on. For example, if you name the type of product and for what industry, they can ask, oh, well, how did you use an Apex trigger? Why did you use an Apex trigger? Why not a process or why not a workflow rule, right? So I think definitely the details and then a quantitative measure. And the resume guide I have on the experience section, I think speaks a lot on this.
Okay, cool. Anything else, Andrew? You should have
Um,
improved.
I think I think that's the biggest part. I think once they specify the details of how they use triggers, queries, Apex, how they use Community Cloud, like what was the business purpose, and if they provide a quantitative measure of impact results, I think that will go a long way.
Cool, cool, cool. All right. So uh, this is a real person, yeah. I Jamal Arzamata. She comes from my home country and she's learning Salesforce in US and hopes to land her first Salesforce developer job. She doesn't come from an IT background. She was a lawyer, as we can see. She even was an arbitrator on some in some courts. And
Right?
earlier this year, she started on a Salesforce path. And so she's interning right now, getting some certifications and like learning GitHub, Agile. If someone as someone who's learning, who's trying to get their first full-time Salesforce developer or admin job, is this the right path? Like, should it be somehow different? What would you do? What would you
Sure,
suggest?
sure. So typically, I like to evaluate this on a case by case basis. The first step is identifying where their pipeline stops. So is it that they're getting interviews, but then they can't get back to the first round, or is it that they're not getting any interviews at all, or is it that they're getting interviews up until the second or third round? And then based on that, you can make a judgment. Um,
Mm,
so let me break it down for you. If they're not getting any interviews at all, usually it's an issue with the resume. But I think because she has the PD1 certification, right? She should be okay. I know that's like the gold standard for developers. If they're not getting past the first round, it's typically because they're not able to talk well about themselves and their experience. Again, typically when you do the first round and the recruiter asks you about yourself, you're supposed to be able to sell yourself very well, represent your experience, represent your skills, tell a story. I think a lot of people don't do that very well. If you can't get past the second round, it's typically because of a lack of technical experience or depth. Um, and then the third round is just, I think, the most difficult one because they analyze so many different things, and again, it can come down to so many different factors. So I think it really depends on where on the pipeline they see their opportunities falling through.
cool. And depending on where the pipeline stops, you tackle that issue, right? If it's like
Exactly, exactly.
if it's a tech, if let's say they fail the technical interview, as someone who's new, should they should what would you suggest to them? Because I think that's a
Sure, so,
typical
sure.
most difficult section for many.
Sure. Well, like I think a lot of people just lack, I think, honest advice. Um, I'm sure you seem like a very direct person. I'm a very direct person too. So for example, when I was at Deloitte, I had one Salesforce developer reach out to me and said, "Hey, I'm new to this. I've been doing pro bono work for 6 months. I know Apex, I know triggers. I want to work at Deloitte." And I said, "Sure. We're hiring." I was actually one of the interviewers back then. I said, "Sure. Like, let's hop on the call. Let me evaluate your skill set. And if like I think you're good, then I'll refer you. We can move forward with it." Um, so he said like, "Oh yeah, I know triggers really well." So I asked him, I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, what are the available contexts for trigger?" He didn't know what I was talking about. So I said, "Okay, like one is before insert. What is another one?" Like he just could not tell me. And so there I was like really shocked. It was like the basics. And I said, "Okay, like, do you know what vocifying a trigger is?" Again, he had no idea what that was. So like in that scenario, I would say, I think people will do like one trailhead and then they'll put like, "Oh, I can do triggers," but in reality, they're not project ready. Sure, they know the basics, but they're not project ready. So I think in that case, it would be continuing to develop experience, so that you can be project ready. Because when you get a job, they're not looking for like passion. They're looking for someone who can actually go do the job, right? And so make sure you can actually do the job before applying, and make sure you're able to represent your skills as well during the interviews.
Yeah. Yes. But for someone who's new, sh- like learning Apex is very difficult. Like to Trailhead might be even boring. Like you just do things just without understanding it or without it being intuitive. And maybe it was easier for you because you come from a computer science background and
Sure.
maybe there's a lot you can relate to from your studies, for someone who's totally new, uh, what do you think would be good for them to better understand Apex?
Sure. So the great thing about Apex, like it's pretty much just Java. I think there's like a few minor like formatting differences, but otherwise it's just Java. And if you think about how coding skills are transferable, Apex is transferable to Python and just like most languages. I would say try to find volunteer opportunities. And even if they're not in Salesforce, or even if Salesforce is a part of it, you can still develop the same type of critical thinking, the same skill set by doing those opportunities. So, for example, I used to do a lot of pro bono work. I helped this nonprofit with their Salesforce org, but then, for example, they also needed some, desktop, some automation on, like extracting certain fields from Microsoft Word documents, renaming documents. And so like I wrote a quick Python script for them. That still was a valuable experience to have. Scripting, because you also do script on Salesforce often, where you need to write a quick script to like update fields or something. So that was still applicable. So I'd say, try to gain exposure to coding, even if it's outside of Salesforce. And I think that will still help support your learning in Apex, because the problem solving and coding skills are very transferable to Apex.
Cool. So you suggest volunteering roles where you can practice your Apex and just
Or
get used,
Python or
or
coding.
Python,
Like
really?
I said, like it's yeah, I think the skills are very transferable, right? Problem solving, for loops, like you do the same process, you do for loops, you do if statements, like it's very transferable.
I see, I see, I see. Never thought about it that way. I it's true, right? In JavaScript also you have for loops and fun.
Exactly, and in writing components, you're writing JavaScript anyway, because I think like there are only so many Salesforce opportunities out there, but like I'm sure any like charity or nonprofit is understaffed. They need help, even if it's quick scripts or quick applications to expedite what they're doing, and then I'm sure after they write in Python, they can probably figure out how to write it in Apex or JavaScript
Mm,
because they've already done it before.
cool, cool. Thank you very much. Last question, Andrew.
Sure.
Because I'm very sensitive about your time and how much you gave me. What has been the happiest moment in your Salesforce career?
Happiest moment. Um, I would say when I got my job at McKinsey, when I was in Canada, because I had always dreamed about coming to the U.S. to work,
Mm,
and I think that I just thought like the U.S. market. Like, I was always fascinated with how big the U.S. market is, how big the cities are here. All the people. Like at my Salesforce developer meetup in Ottawa, man, there were like 3 people who would show up, including me. And so like I just always romanticized the idea of going to these meetups, having like 100 people there, and all the people I could meet, and being in the big city, living the American dream. I think when I got that job and I was able to come to the U.S., like that was the happiest moment of my life. Um, Being able to move to Chicago, a city that I ended up falling in love with. Yeah, I think that was definitely the highlight of my career.
cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that must be also really tough, changing geographies, from coming into US. Cool, cool, very cool story. All right, Andrew, thank you so much for all this information. So much thick with information. Just your LinkedIn post, boom, 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 content, good content. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time.
Thank you, Say.